Good afternoon. Welcome to this edition of the National Weather Association Webinar Wednesday. Today we have an exciting topic about the NWA Awards. And I just want to remind you that you can follow along or ask questions by using our hashtag NWA Web. That's NWA WEB. And we have people monitoring that. Will pass questions on to us. And you can also share your comments there. And I want to thank Trevor Boucher for hosting this webinar and keeping us running, and John Keys from the Social Media Committee for tweeting out the webinar. This webinar is being recorded today for future viewing. We know that many of our members are busy with weather today, so please share it with others and let them know about this if they were too busy to join us live. Joining us today for this webinar Wednesday is President-elect Todd Lericos. Todd will be the president in 2020. He recently completed his term as the chair of the NWA Awards Committee. He's also the MIC of the National Weather Service in Las Vegas, Nevada. The title today is, and the award goes to, Pay It Forward by Recognizing Achievement through the NWA Awards Program. So Todd will give us an overview of the program and talk about some changes, and then we'll have a Q&A period at the end. So at this time, I want to turn it over to Todd.
So good morning or afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're at in the world at this point. Thanks for joining us. I'm here today to talk about awards and some of the exciting things that we have planned over the next year and some changes we have to the awards committee itself, but also talk about the program itself and maybe answer some questions that you may have about nominating, getting nominated and receiving an award. And so I'm kind of making myself available for that. I should take a moment to recognize that Laura Pagano from the Weather Prediction Center in Washington has taken over my position as awards chair as of a couple of months ago. She couldn't make the webinar today, but she is now the chair and is going to see through a lot of the changes that that we have been planning for some time in the awards committee moving through it. I'd also like to recognize the other 11 members of the awards committee. They are instrumental really in helping us to evaluate nominations, come up with award winners, and really help us with this transition over to a modified or newer awards program structure. They come from all sectors of our career field, from academic to private, broadcast, and government meteorologists, and all of them are fantastic and really are 110% in helping us to try and do our duties throughout the year, which is coming up with the award winners, and also with like I said, our changes that are happening. So I want to take a moment to thank them for their service. So just in my introduction, I think some of the things that I wanted to kind of walk through today during the webinar is really in a couple of main areas. First and foremost, again, to kind of answer your questions about the award nomination process and kind of demystify it a little bit. The other is to try and give you a couple of pointers on how the nomination process can go a lot smoother and can actually put the person you're nominating in a better position to win an award. And I think that's an important discussion to have because we see a lot of variability in nominations, and I'd like to be able to kind of talk to you about that. And next, I think, or in addition to, I should say, is to kind of talk a little bit about some of the future plans we have for the awards committee and some of the changes that we have that are going to make it a little bit easier for you to do that. So I guess before I open it up to any real questions, one of the things that I wanted to kind of get across was this tips for award nominations. And I think it's important to understand that we get a lot of variability in our award nominations. Some of them are a couple of sentences and some of them are 50 pages. And length really doesn't matter so much as content. And from the awards committee perspective, we're looking for a couple of different things in an award nomination. I think the biggest thing that I could, and the one tip that you could take away from this webinar if you're going to do an award nomination, is give the awards committee context. You have to remember that even though somebody might be very well known in our career field, or may not, depending on who you're nominating, you can't assume that the awards committee has context on the accomplishments or the actions that that person or group has done. And so as a nominator, it's really kind of your job to put all of their accomplishments and actions into context for us. And in that then is, it's always a good idea to kind of stick to an action result type of format. And what I mean by that is maybe the person or group accomplished something, but then the next question should be, so what? In other words, what happened as a result of that action or accomplishment? Really helps the awards team put those things into context. Bullet formats, for those who are familiar with writing bullet formats, perhaps from the military or even from other circles, bullet formats are actually in that structure, an action and a result. And so you don't necessarily have to write bullet formats in a nomination, but as you're writing it, think about that. What did the action or accomplishment really result in? The other is to provide supporting documentation. We have some changes coming in the future that are going to help this a little bit. We'll talk about them later. But even now, it's perfectly fine for you to email supporting documentation after you submit your nomination, or there's actually a block on the form, the current form that has supporting documentation where you can just copy and paste that in. So, and supporting documentation can also include endorsements from others, which is also another good idea, particularly if the person you're nominating has accomplishments that are far-reaching. And so, there are certainly probably a number of things we can discuss about how an award nomination should be structured, but these four, I think, are critically important to kind of putting the person who is nominating, putting the person who you are nominating forward more, or a group, I should say. It's not, may not just be a person. So I don't know, is there any questions? I guess I'll just open it up. If anybody has any questions about the nomination process itself, by all means, chat it in and relay it, and I can certainly answer your questions. I don't know, Janice, did any come in so far? Or?
I have to remember to unmute myself. I don't see any questions so far, but I guess, you pointed out some people submit 2 sentences, some people much more. What is the one thing that people might do that moves their nomination to the bottom of the list? I guess, so what can they do to make sure they don't move to the bottom of the list?
I think, those 4 things that I outlined, I think if those are thought about before the nomination is written, I think the nomination itself is going to be in a lot better shape. When it gets to the awards committee, again, that's supporting documentation and context into what the accomplishments were. The other is to kind of run the nomination by a few people. Maybe have it proofread by a few of your colleagues or even somebody outside the career field to see how it lands and how it sounds. This is, you still don't like nominations an overburdensome process, but there does have to be a little bit of thought process that goes into it in order to be able, to compete with awards where we're trying to evaluate sometimes up as much as 5, 6, or even 7 candidates in a year for a particular award. So if I were to add one thing to that list I just had, it would probably be have a few people proofread it. How does it sound? How does it land? Because chances are when the awards committee is reading it, it's going to land in a similar way, right? We're reading it cold, and so having that done before you submit might be a good idea.
I actually have something to add to that, if you don't mind. Todd, you and I have, working in the same office, we have this discussion a lot. One of the things that you shared with me is the last couple of years that you've had to actually be the person that goes up there and says why these people are being, why they were nominated and why they were awarded. And you had shared with me, and I didn't know this, that the nomination itself often is what is said in front of everyone at the luncheon that the awards give away. So it was really helpful for me in future award nominations to write it as if you were going to be reading it to everyone. And it gives everyone the ability, not only makes the person that has to read this, gives them context of what to read, but then it also adds that certain level of personalization to when that time comes, when the person actually gets the award. So I think that was really helpful for me to write these a little bit more personal way, so that that comes out when the award is actually given.
Yeah, a lot of times you're right. We've had these conversations before, and if the person you're nominating wins, you want that presentation to be impactful. And we're going to do some future work on some of the nominations and the new forms that we have, again, which we might talk about later here, but in writing what is essentially a short citation. But right now, as it stands, the award committee has to go in to that nomination and has to draw out that information and put together an impactful statement about what that person or group accomplished. Sometimes that's easy, depending on the event or accomplishment. Sometimes it's not, again, because we don't have that context. And if you can help us with that, then I think that not only puts the person you're nominating in a better light and a better position to win, but also then makes that presentation much more impactful when we get to the awards banquet. So sometimes we have to fill in a lot of, getting that action result. If we understand that, we can put those things into context a little bit more when we're presenting it, not just evaluating it whether it wins or not.
And that citation is used on the award plaque. So that is what people will have for the future to remember that award, to show to others of their accomplishments. So having a really concise and important citation can be very important for memorializing the award. And it's pretty exciting to visit with award winners and to recognize them. Is that the most exciting part of the job?
Yes, I think all the awards committee, I think, feels that awarding our membership, and in some cases they're not members in certain scenarios, but awarding for these awards is an honor, really, for the committee itself. Presenting it is even better. I've presented the last 3 years now, and it's really it has an impact on me. I think it's one of the things that one of the great things about the NWA is our recognition. And in fact, there's a couple of things that to keep in mind about why to nominate. And I think I had a few bullet points put together on this, but it's really a good way to pay it forward, right? So our theme from our president, Paul Schlatter, this year is to pay it forward. I think that even though that's a theme this year, I think that's something that as leaders, we all want to do every year, not just this year, but it is an emphasis this year. But awards are a way to do that, to recognize our colleagues and all the great work that they're doing. So it's a way to recognize the actions of the people in our career field and how it's making an impact. It doesn't have just applicability inside the NWA. Highlighting these accomplishments and actions to a wider audience and out to the rest of the world, I think, is a very important thing. Operational meteorology is critical in many, many ways, and getting all of that good work out there is really important. And probably the last, and I would argue just as important, these are all equally important, is upholding the ideals and the standards of our association. It's very clear why we exist and what our mission is. And awards are a way to kind of uphold what we feel is a very important component of the overall meteorology and hydrometeorology science. So I think when I think of why I want to nominate, these are the three things that I kind of think of, and I think the awards committee is kind of focusing on. And if you're considering nominating, these are some things to think about.
We have quite a few awards that we give out. Some are for our members, some are that is not a requirement, and others are for people who provide public service in assisting our members and getting the message out. So I hope everybody will take a look at all the award categories that we have on our webpage at nwas.org. Are there any key awards that you wanted to mention or talk about?
Yeah, this is just my personal opinion, but I'm sure other people feel this way as well. I love all the awards. I think giving people awards, as I stated before, is a great thing, particularly to our membership. But some of the more impactful awards that I've had the pleasure of presenting over the last couple of years have been to the Nashville weather folks, who are volunteers, that are really helping the science in our career field do what we need to do. And some of the public education awards where we're presenting to emergency managers or other career fields that are associated with our career field and that are having a large impact. I think, so I wouldn't just think meteorology or hydrometeorology. I would be thinking, well outside of that, there are award categories for that. As Janice said, I would go to our webpage and read through the different criteria for these awards and take a look at that. And if somebody you work with in another related career field is having a major impact, consider nominating them.
That's a very good point. And I wanted to point out that we do have examples on the webpage of previous nominations that were successful so that people can get some ideas about how to write a nomination and what might be considered for that particular award itself. And we have several special awards. Are those handled any different than the routine yearly awards?
Yeah, they're handled a little differently. In the internal process, there has to be some coordination with special awards at a higher level than the awards committee itself. But the special awards are kind of they're special, right? It's in their name, and you can see on our website that it's a special lifetime achievement, special achievement award, special appreciation award, and a lifetime membership award. And so these are awards that are not given out every year. They're given out situationally as we have nominees that rise to the level that we would consider recommending people or groups for that award. And then the awards committee then forwards that up for further approval, whereas the other awards, the awards committee determines the winner and then has some consultation with the board and the president. So it's a little bit different process. It really doesn't matter for nomination purposes on your end. That's just our internal mechanics. But if somebody rises to the level of what you think is a special award, you shouldn't hesitate putting people in for that either. We do take recommendations and we do forward them on. So,
do you ever run into the situation where there's an obvious person or group that should have been nominated, but everybody else kind of assumes someone else nominated them? And is there something that someone should do or a way they can check to see if a nomination has been submitted to make sure that one doesn't get slip through the cracks?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Janice. The answer is an emphatic yes. Many times the award committee sees things going on across the country with our membership or even outside of our membership that we know has some touch to the National Weather Association or our members. And we look at that and go, why isn't there an award for that, right? Or award nomination at least. And so sometimes there is. I don't want to make it sound like there never is, but a lot of times we do get those awards that are timely and make a lot of sense. But some of them are just like, I just don't think they have a champion. Nobody's taken the banner and kind of said, I'm going to put this group of people or this person in for an award. And this cuts across all sectors. And so we see that. And what I would encourage folks to do is, if you're unsure whether or not somebody has put in an award for that person or group, send an email to the awards chair. The email address is on our webpage, on the awards committee webpage. You can send a quick email. Laura has all of the information on our nominations and which ones are in the queue, so to speak, and she can respond to you in short order and just say, yeah, somebody has put an award in. And at that point, she may even ask you to kind of, if you would like to put in any type of an additional information, that's possible too. But if there hasn't been, then that's a great opportunity to think about putting someone in.
It seems like to me. Oops, I forgot to show myself. It seems like to me that if multiple people are, sharing a nomination, isn't that a good thing that you have from multiple different sources? You have the same person or group being nominated. Isn't so? Like, if your fear is that that somebody may have already nominated, if you further nominate the same person for the same award, I would imagine that just increases their chances of getting recognition.
Yeah, and in fact, that was a good comment, Trevor, because one thing that popped into my head while you were saying it is that there's no harm, no foul if we get a nomination and there's already one in the queue for somebody, or some group. That I don't think that's happened since I've been involved, but there's what the committee will take care of either merging them up or not merging them up, and we'd have to look. What are the accomplishments? Is it for the same thing? Is it for the same award? And we may even go back to the nominators and ask some questions at that point. There's really no strict policy on that at this point, but we would work that through the committee and then possibly go back to the nominators. And it may result in just keeping 2 award nominations going if they're disparate or different, or it may wind up being merging them or going for a special award. So anything's on the table there. It's not a big deal. You don't necessarily have to check. You're more than welcome to if you want. But if you feel strong, want to put in an award, put one in. If there's a duplicate, we'll get back with you and we'll let you know. And we'll decide, the best way forward together.
Well, and years ago, we would open the award nomination period for just a short period of time, but it was recognized that, people may be thinking at the moment an event just passes and, oh, we need to recognize this person. So the event form is open all year. I don't know if everyone knows that, but this year, to be considered for a 2019 award, the submissions need to be submitted by May 17th. But can you tell us how many years back we consider awards if people have submitted awards in previous years?
Sure. In going to the meetings and talking to NWA members over time, this tends to be one of the more confusing things. And I think it's because we've said there's no deadline or no open period, but then there is a deadline. So to kind of explain that, a number of years ago when Jeff Evans was the awards committee chair before my tenure, the awards committee made a decision to, instead of having an open period for a couple of months, where award nominations were kind of vacuumed up during that period of time, and then decided on for the coming annual meeting later. That usually happened in the spring. What we said is why are we closing the door on award nominations at any one particular time during the year? So what we said was you can submit an award anytime. It doesn't really matter. 365 days a year, you can submit an award. The only deadline we have is that we have to draw the line somewhere with all of the nominations that we have in the queue to be able to say, okay, all the nominations we have in the queue at this particular time are locked. These are the ones we're evaluating for awards at the coming annual meeting. That is the deadline that Janice was talking about in May. Typically, that deadline falls in April or May, depending on when the actual annual meeting is. But if you were to, put in a nomination a day after that deadline, it really doesn't matter. It just wouldn't be considered for that coming annual meeting. It would be in the queue for the next couple of meetings. And I'll explain that here in a minute, is that any nomination you put in, no matter what time of year, will be good for 3 cycles, meaning 3 years. So if it doesn't win in the year in which you put it in, meaning the next annual meeting, then it'll be good for 2 more. And so it'll stay in the queue, and then if it wins, of course, you'll be notified, and it comes out at that point of the nomination queue, and then you get the award, obviously. If not, it'll age off after 3 years. So this, I think the 3-year helps a great deal because you don't have to resubmit every year, and with that open period, it makes it a little easier. Once you drop it with us, it stays with us for 3 years.
Okay, at this point, I didn't know if you wanted to talk a little bit more about the award nomination process, but I also know that there are changes in store, so I'll let you choose which direction you want to go with that. And before you answer, I just want to remind everyone that if you have a question, you can submit those with the hashtag NWAWebWed. So I'll turn it back over to you, Todd.
Okay. A lot of the changes that we have coming down the pike have to do with the nomination process itself. And I think probably the biggest change coming down that is going to be the most noticeable from our membership is our nomination form. And so right now, if you were to submit an award, and I encourage people not to wait for the new form. You know, the old form and the new form, your nomination is still going to get evaluated the same. The newer form may be a little bit easier in the sense that we're tailoring the information more, and I'll get to that here in a second. But our current nomination form, you go in, you select the awards, and there are a certain set of fields that go in there. Mainly the nominators' contact information, who you are, the nominees' information, what the accomplishments were, any supporting documentation, pretty standardized on what you would expect in an award nomination. And so no matter what award you're putting in for, that form is static, is the same. In other words, the fields in which you have to fill in are exactly the same. One of the things that the award committee is working on right now is to change the fields that you're required to fill in based on the award. And this makes a little bit of sense if you think about it, right? So if you're putting somebody in for a Fujito Award, which is mainly a research award, we may want to ask, you know, what type of published papers or impactful research that a person has done. And maybe that's a more specific question that wouldn't necessarily be applicable to, let's say, an operational meteorology award. It may, but it may not, right? And so what we're trying to do is, if you select the type of award you want to put a person or group in for, the questions will change. And that's to lead the nominator a little bit on the information that the awards committee would like to see in order to be able to evaluate that person for that particular award. It gives the awards committee more relevant information to kind of, again, give us that context and be able to compare and contrast all of the nominees. And so we're kind of excited about it. We're working on what those fields need to look like that need to be filled in. There will also be the ability to upload documents on the form itself, and so which will be a benefit to our nominators who may have you know, letters of recommendation or screenshots of web pages or whatever you want to submit in the award nomination. Again, to give that context and detail, you can just upload it with the nomination. It'll be there right for the awards committee. Until we get over to those new forms, by the way, if you do have that supplemental documentation, just email it to us afterwards, and we'll put it in with the overall package. So we'll still take that information, but it'll become much easier with the new forms. And so we're kind of excited about it. We're getting close. And there'll be a little bit of a transition period, mainly because nominations actually come in and are again, like I said before, are valid for 3 years. So we're going to have some mixed nominations for a few years. The awards committee is working on dealing with that and making sure that all the nominations have equal footing when we go in and evaluate. So there's no fear there that if you put an award nomination before, that somehow it'll be disadvantaged when we get over to the new form. That won't be the case at all. The awards committee understands that. And we're going to work on making sure that it's fair until everybody gets onto the new form, which will take, like I said, about 2 years, 3 years. So that's probably the biggest change coming down the pike. I can't really reveal this yet. I'm sorry to kind of put the teaser out there and not give you any information, but the awards committee is working on a couple of new awards, but they will have to go up to the board for approval. And so, but before we announce those, we'd like to get board's consent and brief them on what we would like to do and maybe make some last minute changes to how we would do that. So stay tuned for that. We'll announce it in due time when we get all of that squared away.
Hey Todd, you had said that if you had supporting documentation to send it to the committee, how exactly do they do that? They email to where?
You can send it to the awards chair email address on the webpage, and that'll be a way to get it. You could I can't remember if there's an email address on the form itself. I'd have to go back and take a quick look, but if there is, then you can certainly email it to that as well. So okay. Either way, it would get to us.
I saw on the webpage it's awardschair@nwas.org.
That's right.
Sounds correct? Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I just verified it to make sure, but that is the correct one. Well,
one little tip I will give some folks nominating. A lot of times people will reverse the nominee versus the nominator. So, and I think it's just a matter of speed and filling out the form. I think people just didn't see it, or just it's an accidental flip there. So usually we can kind of tell, like, okay, by what's in the write-up, that hey, I think this is an award for this person, not the other. But so when you go in to make the nomination, by all means, make sure that the nominator and the nominee are kind of correct in there. The other is that the form also has multiple nominators. So like if more than one person is actually nominating somebody, or if there's more than one nominee, you don't have to get too cute in the form. You can just put one name in there, and then in the free form section, just give us a little statement in there that says, hey, this award is for all of these folks, rather than going individual on those fields. It's something else we're going to kind of work on with the newer form. As long as who the award is for is somewhere in that nomination form, we'll see it, and we'll make sure that everybody that you want to get credit for the award gets credit for the award. We usually typically circle back with the nominator too, so that's another opportunity.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in just from my experience of doing this, I've probably done nominations now as a committee chair over the last 3-4 years. And one thing I've noticed is, like, I'll go through the form and I'll fill out everything that's required, but I almost always will have a whole list of things I send externally, not using the form, but letters of recommendation, other nominations or nominators that would be jumping in. And I will continue to update that as things come in. I don't have to wait for any one particular time. I'll just say, hey, just add this to the dossier that we have on this nomination. And it sounds like that's pretty well appreciated. That's certainly not a problem that the awards committee has, is having too much information. Am I right about that?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I don't think anyone should feel that when they put in an award, it's a fire and forget type of situation. You can communicate with the awards committee. You can, provide that supplemental information. You can ask questions, and we'll get back to you, and we'll let you know. So, it's by no means a black hole where you submit a nomination and it either gets an award or it doesn't. The dialogue, if you do have something to update in the nomination, if you do have a question or any type of additional supplemental information, utilize the email address and communicate with us. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I encourage it.
Well, I want to remind everyone that we recognize our award winners at our awards luncheon, which is held at the annual meeting. So this year, the awards luncheon will be on Wednesday, September 11th, and in Huntsville, in coordination with the annual meeting. And it's always an exciting time. And we do work with all the award winners to try the best to get them there in attendance so they can accept in person and hear all the rounds of applause. And it's pretty exciting to see them win, and it's exciting to be awarded. I think it means a lot coming from your peers that they recognize that you've had some accomplishments, and it can be very humbling and very exciting. So, and We do have some awards that are kept secret. We keep Member of the Year secret every year, but we do accept nominations for those. So if you think of someone that maybe we haven't recognized that we should, please submit a nomination for that. And it's usually somebody who's contributed a lot to the NWA as well as the community. So, and I think maybe we should just talk about a little bit more. I know you mentioned the Pay It Forward, which is President Paul Schlotter's theme for this year, but I think awards are a very important way to pay it forward. And we would encourage everyone and our committees and even others from outside the NWA, if they see something in operational meteorology that needs to be acknowledged, to submit. And is there anything you'd like to add about the Pay It Forward?
When I think about paying it forward, I take kind of a broad view of it. I think in many ways it's got kind of a 360 connotation to that. And what I mean by that is that we ought to be thinking about people who have been our mentors, which is kind of a pay it back maybe a little bit. But my point is that maybe we should look to people who have been mentors to us, or people that we look up to that have been in the career field for a while and have a lot of accomplishments. I think we should look to the younger generation and some of the good things that they're doing as they come into the career field, are early in their career and are making an impact. And I think we ought to look at our peers, people that are in our peer group that have come up through the ranks with us, or who we deal with on a day in and day out basis on whatever level you're at. And so I would just encourage people to look 360 for opportunities to put people in for nominations. It just doesn't have to necessarily be, somebody you mentor, but maybe somebody who was your mentor, or somebody that works with you as a peer. So.
Yeah, and I don't mean to toot my own horn, but as a former award member, one of the things that I wasn't expecting to win one when I did, but the thing I asked myself, after that was all over with was, what do I have to do now to win an award moving forward? And I realized it's kind of the wrong question. I find it easier to sit there and go, oh, well, maybe I should be doing the same for other people. Maybe I should be the one that is nominating others to get these awards. That if I didn't think it was coming, and how amazing that felt to know that the work that I'm doing is being recognized, maybe I should be recognizing the work a little bit more actively, instead of just going, oh, well, that's pretty cool, and writing down, oh, I should pay attention to this paper when it comes out. It should physically be, what is the scale of this work? What is it doing? Is it something that is changing our paradigm? Is that something that is impacting large groups of people? What is it? And how hard is it for me to go onto that forum, like you just said, and write a paragraph or get a couple people to write a paragraph about why that's important? And it's really not that much work. And I think a lot of the people that are hesitant to do award nomination think that, oh, well, it's just me, and it's only going to be this one little dictation about what I think is important. But that's exactly what we're looking for. That's what paying it forward is to be able to identify that this work is significant, and this person's not asking for recognition, but you are recognizing it. So why aren't we bringing that to the forefront? So if you haven't had an opportunity to go to an annual meeting, go to one and just listen to the talks, and then listen to the people talk about the talks afterwards. And then you start to really appreciate the scale of what's being done. When other people are thinking that this is going to change the way we do our operations, this is going to be this outreach that we're doing, or, oh, hey, doing this research about anxiety, for instance, or anything like that we had never thought about before, is going to change the way we work. And that's the type of thing that, like, I just think is profound. And then if you get a opportunity to go to annual meeting and notice that, then it becomes really easy to do a nomination. So I just wanted to add that in there. It's like just think about what's moving you and just write something down real quick, and then that becomes an award nomination really easily.
Yeah, and chances are, if somebody is in the caliber of being nominated and possibly winning an award or group, chances are they've impacted more than one person. So even though you may have a reason to write a paragraph or two about how that person impacted you, chances are there's other people out there that have been impacted positively by that too. So reach out to them and do more of a teamwork type of nomination. Time isn't an excuse, right? Because you can submit at any point. So if it takes you 2 months to put it together, that's fine. There's no problem with that. There's no open window you have to hit anymore with nominations. And the other thing about 360, for potential award winners is that the National Weather Association has done a tremendous job over the last couple of years of really trying to grow our organization, to provide opportunities for younger folks coming into the career field to have an opportunity to lead, and for folks that have been around a long time to lead. So I think these awards, if we look more broadly for these awards, I think that's another way in which we encourage the participation in our overall association. So just a thought there.
And I'll just add that there are some of our awards that we have awarded more than one person in a year. So they're individually recognized, but for example, special achievement, lifetime achievement awards, or things like that. So there are some of the awards that we can award multiples in 1 year.
Right.
So I'm looking here to see if we've had any questions come in. I guess we're nearing an hour here. We'll see if any questions come in. This is a good time to submit them. You can submit them with the hashtag NWA WebWed. And just want to go back around. Is there anything that you thought of as we're talking that you forgot to mention, or anything else you want to highlight again?
In some of the new things that the awards committee is doing, and these are things that, again, that are a little bit smaller. Well, they're not small for us as far as what we're doing internally, but as far as how they'll look when we get them completed, is we're redoing the definitions of the awards to be a little bit more descriptive about what the award is, what its history is, and to kind of help nominators, does this person or group fit into that category? So that's needed some work for a little while. The definitions that are on the webpage are good. I think they can be used right now, but we are working on a little bit more descriptive text there to kind of help the nominator say, yeah, I think this person or group would qualify. So that's coming down the pike too. So we're doing a lot of smaller things in the committee, other than the redoing of the form and all of that I think will help nominators. We're also going to provide some standards. I talked a little bit about things that the awards committee would like to see in the nominations, that action result and supplemental documentation. Few things are harder to put up with than a good example, right? So we're going to provide some examples to kind of have out there for people to look at and say, oh, okay, I see, the type of thing that they're trying to get at here with some of these questions that they're asking in the nomination form. And so I think that will also help the nominators go through and say, oh, have some idea of the types of nominations that are of the quality that they can compete with all of the other nominations. So those are just a few of the other smaller things we're working on. You're going to be hearing more from us as well. We're going to be a little bit more out there. We're working with social media committee. We're working with some of the other committees on trying to get awards and award nominations a little more forward in the agency in the association, and at various times during the year. We'll be doing more reminders and things like that may prompt you, because let's face it, I know we're all busy and we're all buried up to here with work every single day, and sometimes it drops from our initial thoughts or from our short-term memories. So we're just going to be more periodically. You'll hear from us through the NWA communication channels to kind of remind you to get those award nominations in if you're considering it.
All right, and I will say that Laura and I spoke this previous week, and we're going to keep the same form that we have now available for people to submit nominations, and then we'll roll out the new form sometime after May 17th. That gives us a little more time to test it and do all that. So don't wait on that form to submit a nomination. Go ahead and submit them today. And want to remind everyone that if you want it considered for a 2019 award, May 17th is the deadline to submit that nomination. And I think just a recap of the key points that I heard you say, that if you think somebody should be nominated, ask so what, and what were the results of that, what were the accomplishments, how did they impact people, and make sure you really give the awards committee the context of why that person should be awarded. And don't hesitate to reach out to the committee if you have any questions or you want to add supplemental information. They can do that through awardschair@nwas.org. And so, Trevor, have you seen any questions, or is there anything else you want to add?
No, it's actually, not too many questions. But the only thing that I wanted to kind of pick on one specific award was the Walter J. Bennett Public Service Award. I'm a huge fan of this award because it's awarded to non-meteorologists. So if you have, if you're working at a local WFO like I do in the Weather Service, then it's really easy to find nominations for this. Who in your community is a Weather Radio Nation ambassador? That's a great start. That is doing some work that's standalone from other people. That's really outstanding. And I think we should be getting like 122 of these nominations every year, in my opinion. But just a really easy one to look at and nominate somebody and give them a formal way of saying that you appreciate the work they're doing. That's my little plug for that particular award. I'm a really big fan of it. But other than that, I don't have anything else.
Okay, before we wrap this up, Todd, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I think we hit it all. I was, jotting down a few things to kind of get across to everybody that is watching today or may watch on the recorded version. I'll just reiterate something that you said, Janice, just a few seconds ago, and that is that reach out to us if you have questions. The door is always open. This committee exists for the membership. And we are more than happy to answer questions, inquiries. Don't sit out there and wonder what the answer is. We'll be more than happy to help you with any part of the process in order to be able to get what we consider to be important nominations into the pipeline. So.
All right. Well, if you want to submit a nomination, go to nwas.org, and under the annual meeting tab, you'll see annual awards, and that will take you to the webpage that explains all the awards and has the nomination form and contact information. So everyone get out there, submit a nomination. I know we've had several big exciting events across the U.S. in the last year, and this next few days is going to be pretty exciting too. So there's a lot of people out there deserving of awards, and I want to thank our webinar committee, our awards committee, and our social media committee. They all played a role as a team in getting this webinar going. And as you can see, our volunteers do a lot of work for us, and we really appreciate all of the volunteers. So I hope you all have a great day, and please share the word about National Weather Association Awards. Thank you.